to this?
I think that the Indian newspapers do seem to have adapted quite well. Circulation figures, as far as I know, are doing very well. What there has been, I think, which is a very important and very good thing, really, is there has been a realization of the power and influence of the media in languages other than English. Even 20 years ago, but the general assumption of advertisers was, why bother to advertise in Hindi or Punjabi or Bengali media, because people who read those papers, they don't have much money, they can't buy what we advertise. So all the stress was on the English media. Now if you look at the top 10 newspapers, the last time I did, you'll find that there is only one English newspaper in that lot, and that was the Times of India. So I think this is a good and healthy development which has taken place.
In India?
Yeah, I think it can happen anywhere. I'm not saying that I have evidence that people are tapping phones here, but there is obviously a risk that journalists will fall into that. If you take the whole question of sting operations, which comes fairly near that, there have been cases in India, I think, where sting operations have been mounted against the wrong person or not for proper reasons, and that has caused problems. And we do know perfectly well that in local press and in more remote areas, sting operations are sometimes used as a way of blackmailing people. In my view, sting operations should only be used when there is a story of very considerable importance and there is no other way of getting at it. Perhaps he's not a bad name in India because he isn't a name here, really. Yes, he is involved marginally in television here, but you don't have Murdoch newspapers here, and you don't have a channel like Fox News either. And you haven't had a phone tapping scandal like the News of the World one. So maybe he's comparatively unknown here, although maybe he wouldn't like to hear that. That's all very muddy, and I mentioned in my chapter about Ratan Tata, I mentioned that his voice was heard, but I didn't come to any conclusion about it. The reason why I wrote about Tatars in my book was something which some people haven't quite understood. It wasn't to really investigate them and say that, are they good or are they bad? What is good about them? What is bad about them? The thing was really to bring to the attention of people the remarkable achievements of the Tata group once they were freed from the restraints of the Neta Babu Raj and of the license permit Raj. So that was the intention, to demonstrate the enormous ability that there is in India, if only we can get governance right. And also to get into the book some criticism of the government and bad governance by business. Because I always contend that if only business will raise its voice against bad governance, then we may get something done about bad governance. Because if business doesn't flourish, then the economy doesn't grow. And all the politicians seem to be interested in is the economy going. But I would just add one thing very quickly there. I do not believe that business should be able to dictate the policies of the government. I do believe that business needs to play a role in a balanced economy in which all sorts of other elements are also playing a balanced role. Well, I didn't think in life many things were either wholly good or wholly bad. There are advantages in good and in technology and disadvantages. The great disadvantage, I think, of technology now is that it is the ability to transmit news on the spot is being badly misused. It's being badly misused by this endless, badly edited breaking news syndrome. It's being badly misused, as I said earlier, by this overuse of this syndrome of a presenter talking to a journalist on the spot, and it's being badly used to overload journalists, particularly in multimedia organizations, to make journalists do radio, television, and online journalism at the same time, with the net result that they have absolutely no time to find out what's going on. So, the ability to communicate in any way is, of course, valuable. But we always forget that there can be over-communication. People, another obvious example is, I think, many people spend far too much time in front of screens rather than meeting people face to face. Recently, I did a radio program about the difference between talking to people on the net and talking to people face to face. Yes, I think there will be a dramatic change. I think it will make a difference to FM radio. It will give FM radio many more listeners. If you take the example of Britain, the number one political show of the day is not on television, it's on radio. The one which sets the agenda is the Today programme on BBC Radio 4. If you go around Britain now and you talk to a lot of people, for many people it's almost become fashionable to say, I don't watch television, but I do listen to radio. Radio is a hugely powerful medium. And of course, if news can be, current affairs can be broadcast on FM radio, it will make a big difference to radio, and I think there will be many people who will turn to FM radio for their news. Well, I think telling a story on radio is much harder than it is telling a story on television. But, and I firmly believe this, the pictures on radio are better than the pictures on television. And the pictures you show on radio, you describe on radio, the stories you tell on radio are much more likely to stick in people's heads than the television shows are. The art of radio broadcasting, in many forms of radio broadcasting, is to make each listener think that you are speaking to them individually. And I think you can do that in a much deeper and more meaningful way on radio than you can on television.